Welcome to BAM, the show conquering sameness. In a realm where most law firm marketing looks cloned, bios are biohazardous, and brand stories are buried in sludge, one force rises to cut through the noise. By day, she's Vivica Hess, strategic, advisor, brander, and architect. But when the fog of sameness thickens, she transforms into the hyperhero. Wielder of hyper-personalized branding and engagement power, sworn enemy of toxic messaging and radioactive reputations. And I'm your guide, the BAM Man, here to bring you on this journey through the brand quagmire. This is BAM, the show conquering sameness, one platform at a time.
The mess of this city. BAM! 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 I'm BAM Man, conquering sameness, one platform at a time. BAM.
We drop into the muck, the biohazard bog, where LinkedIn, a veritable super site of sameness, lets bios decay unread and headers ooze the same sludge-soaked slogans. This is where the hyperhero began. With a deep breath and a fearless step into the contamination zone, she detected the microsignals others ignored, the subtle frequency shifts of an identity submerged in biofilm. And what has she found? Biohazard bios, radioactive engagement levels, muted voices trapped under layers of digital decay. Hyperhero, what first tipped you off that legal professionals were stuck in a toxic loop of generic bios, and what made you want to do something different?
Well, thanks first, BAM Man, for offering this platform here to try and pull everybody out of that sea of sameness. And I think one of the things that struck me first was the fact that we can read most of these profiles on LinkedIn, and before you know it, we're either falling asleep or scrolling onward. And there was just nothing that was standing out. There was nothing that was popping. There was nothing that was out of the ordinary, extraordinary, provocative, or even curious or interesting. And so, I said, here are all these different people with the same header, the same title, and nothing's grabbing attention. We've got to change that because all these individuals have different stories. They have different backgrounds. And so, why not show a little bit more of that? Why does everybody follow the same template that's either sending you into a snooze or scrolling onward? That's what first caught my attention.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, us both having worked with attorneys for a long time, attorneys have a mind frame of wanting to fit in to what they see going on around them. And so when we speak to them of being different and sticking out, there's probably a little bit of something that maybe the hairs on the back of their neck might rise a little bit, or maybe they get a little bit of a lump in their throat of, well, no, I want to be like the other attorneys and their pages. So I imagine that pulling people out of that frame of mind can often be a little challenging. What is something that you say to them that more often than not, when you use the phrase or you use this illustration or whatever, it kind of turns on the light for them on why it's important to be different in their bio?
Well, I can tell you right away what I lead with, and that is, did you happen to notice that in the United States alone, there are 1.8 million other attorneys? That is who you're competing with. How are you going to set yourself apart? How are you going to rise? And, it doesn't matter all the tools, the deep pockets you have. There's only one thing that will truly set you apart, and that is you. And there's only one of you, your story, your character, your voice, your vibe. That's the only thing where you will outcompete absolutely everybody. So do you want to show up? Do you want to show up as a person that you are with your experience, your story, and what you're passionate about? Then let your personality shine through. Don't be, as we were ingrained to follow the sheep. From day one, taking the bar exam, think like sheep. Don't do anything different. Don't get creative. And from there, it just goes downhill through a whole, legal experience. And we're all taught to fit in and look the same. So it's a journey. It's a bit of a journey. But for the ones that look around and say, you know what, there's a lot of competition here. How are we going to stand out? Well, you can either exhaust yourself or exhaust your pockets and your budget, or you can actually stand out by showing your personality, your character, your stories, your experience. That's something that nobody else has.
Even in the thick of the swamp, though, there's one more zone that's toxic than all the rest. Again, we've talked about this, the LinkedIn bio page. What was once meant to connect has become a graveyard of jargon, where credentials scream louder than character and algorithms feast on lifeless sludge. This is where the hyperhero dives in deep, not to polish, but to purge, to rip the voice back from the void and rebuild something that actually speaks. Why is the LinkedIn bio the most contaminated of them all? And how do you specifically help clients reclaim it as a tool for connection instead of just another sterile resume?
Yeah, well, the short answer is that this is the most contaminated because this is referring to the about section, what used to be called the summary section. This is where we have 2,600 characters. It's one of the biggest pieces of our profile and our presence. And this is because you have so much space is where you have ample room to really go in the wrong direction. And this is where a lot of lawyers think they have ample space to shout out their accolades and their multi-million-dollar settlements and their AVO and their, super lawyers and all this. But what they forget is just because they're writing it doesn't mean it's not a conversation. This is a two-way street. This is an engagement. You're inviting people in to feeling heard and seen there. So the about section is where you tell a story. You tell the story of your background, why they should listen to you, why you're different, why you're passionate about what you do. And you speak to them in first person. I still see lawyer profiles where they're speaking about themselves in third person. I think, what are you having your intern or assistant write this for you? As soon as you speak in third person, you're creating that gap. You're creating a distance to that person. So keep it in first person. You're having a dialogue with one prospective client. Think about it that way. And that's, I think, is where you can get in the most trouble. You have ample space to shout, as we've been taught and brainwashed, to shout out, tell people how great you are, but don't. Just share what you're passionate about. Invite people in, create questions in their mind, and let them know. Don't share stories gratuitously, but actually place elements of the story in a way where they can identify, self-identify, where you're speaking to them. So that is the beginning of a conversation.
I don't do well with the about part because I'm all about like bullet point. This is what I do. This is how I do it. But I like that. Tell a story of your life and, be willing to take your shoes off and show them that you have, you have clay feet, that you're not indestructible, that you're not, divine, that you're just another person like them who happens to have knowledge in this particular skill set. And I think that so often we look at that and to us, it's like, I've had LinkedIn 17 years, but I've only taken it seriously for the last year because I was just like, I don't need a job. What do I need to do LinkedIn for? Now, as I've developed my new agency, I've seen that how important it is and what it does. And so, I'm reminded when you talked about how in the about section is 2,600 characters and this is where people can hurt themselves. It's like my mom used to say, giving you enough rope to hang yourself. It's like LinkedIn's giving us enough rope to hang ourselves, to reveal who we really are.
Well, it definitely changed. In the last 10 years, I'd say, especially since the pandemic, where people did turn to LinkedIn when they couldn't go out, they couldn't network, they couldn't play golf, they couldn't do whatever they did to network. They really reevaluated how to use these online platforms. And I saw a big shift there. So LinkedIn has moved so far away from the resume portal that it once was known for, where you went to look for work, jobs, referrals, partners. It is so much more than that now in a real conversational piece. But this is where a lot of folks get lost. And the whole idea of telling a story, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying don't use your accolades, your experience, your wins, your accomplishments, but weave it into a story and, draw them into that story, paint that picture. Then you can sort of fit in all those accolades. But if you do it through a story, we grew up as kids on stories. It's still, as big kids, it's still a thing that draws us in.
Absolutely. Stories connect. I think we all know that, a great storyteller will get a lot further in life than a great fact checker. And Absolutely. So I certainly agree with that. Well, let's move down this path a little bit. We're seeing the importance of the bio. We're fighting against the fact that it can become a biohazard where people just get there and don't do anything with it. But beyond that, we've got a couple of other monsters that as we travel through LinkedIn land and we're teaming up to fight these battles. The next one is brand rot. Brand rot never crashes through the walls. It seeps in slowly like toxic mold in the mind. Over time, boldness fades and clarity dulls. The bio dies of contamination, but not on your watch. You don't just rewrite bios. You revive reputations. What is the process like when you help a lawyer align their LinkedIn bio with who they really are and bring that bio back to life? What does that process typically look like for you and the attorney?
Yeah, I love that question because you use two words that mean a lot to me. And one is revive and bringing back your voice. And those are two completely appropriate terms for exactly what I do. And what I'm very passionate about doing is, nobody ever left or said goodbye to their persona, their personality, their passion. It's there. But we hit the ground running. We're pumping out the billable hours. We're hitting deadlines. Life gets really busy. And so my job is to get on a call with an attorney and start digging. We start with the softball questions. We go deeper and deeper. And I'll admit, I'm not a good fit for everybody. But the ones that are bold enough to open up just a little bit, we go pretty deep. And what I'm trying to find is that personality, that passion, the fire that lit them up at one point in their careers. And it's just gone dormant. But if I can put some fire in it, if we can revive it, resurface that, and then, and then have that show up in their communications, in their bios, in their headline. I see attorneys actually light up. They're almost, rejuvenated by it. And they say, well, this is exciting. I get to be more of me. It's okay. Yes, yeah. It's okay. Not only is it okay, this is what we want to see. This is the only thing that's going to set you apart. So enjoy it. Have fun. And oftentimes after we've had this call, I've had some time to sort of massage the words and to sort of digest, what their story is. And we kind of walk through it afterwards. One of the things that I've heard it a few times, that every time I said, this is what I live for, they'll say, it almost feels like you know me better than I do know myself. And that lights me up.
When you have a client who says that thing that you're just like, that's what I was trying to accomplish and I didn't.
That's what I didn't go.
For. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly in a different thing that we have different metrics that we look for, but there's just nothing better in this industry. So working with these attorneys, seeing kind of the erosion of their brand, both through, their bio and again, it could be in many other areas, but really looking at LinkedIn specifically. Now that the brand is detoxed, the audience is starting to listen. The LinkedIn bio isn't just existing, it's connecting. There's no more summaries, buzzwords, just real, readable stories designed for discovery and built to convert. What's your approach for expanding a great bio into somebody who now wants to produce authoritative positioning, thought leadership content that actually begins now to draw people in? They land on the page. It's worth knowing more of this person. Now I'm going to start looking to see what they write, what their videos are, what is their content. How do you approach helping attorneys now go beyond just the bio page?
One of the things I'm a big advocate of, and I think it never ends, but I say first off, and it's a little bit counterintuitive. First off, before creating the content, have a look around. Listen very carefully. Who's resonating? Who among your fellow attorneys is resonating, is really getting traction? See why. See the conversations that are out there. Pick up on that. So sometimes if an attorney's been out of the loop from LinkedIn for quite a while, it's a little bit intimidating to jump right in and start creating content. So what I usually suggest is go low key. Just join in on some comments on some existing threads in some conversations that you really value and that you think, you're finding prospective clients or partners, referrals, other attorneys you admire. Jump into those comment threads and sort of get warmed up that way. And the gold is oftentimes in those comments because you see what people are saying, what their pain points are, what they really enjoy talking about. When you've done that for just a little bit and assuming you've been gone from LinkedIn and you're not quite sure how to start putting out content, that's a good starting point because that sort of takes away some of the pressure of putting content out there, but joining in existing conversations. Then take that, see any gaps that you notice or any pain points that haven't been addressed. Use that as the fuel for content that you then create as your original post. And that's a great way to start if you're just a little bit intimidated.
So what I'm hearing is get out there and listen before speaking, which is just like a general rule in life anyway. But then we get on computers or on our phones, and all of our lessons that we know that mom taught us, grandma taught us, we taught in Sunday school, they go out the window. And yet here's a group of people, and in many ways our living is just like, hey, just treat people how you want to be treated. Hey, just listen more than you talk. You know, and we're literally going backwards to some of the basic principles of just societal living and saying, now apply this. Because I think sometimes we look at these outlets and we see the continual abuse of the platform, and we think that that's the status quo that we should participate in. Whereas just being a real human being, telling real stories, connecting in real ways, and putting ourselves out there in a way that shows authenticity often is enough to set us apart. We don't have to be a top 2% copywriter. We just have to be willing to be real. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, absolutely spot on. And I think, you know, sometimes we think that what we put out there in terms of content has to be monumental. It has to be huge. It has to be so relevant, so important. No, sometimes step back. Sometimes the day-to-day occurrences or somebody that caught your attention that seems maybe a little bit minor to you or not a big deal, or I couldn't possibly post or share that. Who's interested in that? Well, then you can kind of move into what I call a pivot post. So take something that made an impression on you. It made an impression on you for a reason, and it had an impact for some reason. Take that point and pivot it into a learning lesson that maybe sort of touches on what you do in your profession. Tie it in. I mean, we're all semi-intelligent beings, at least for the most part. You know, you can spin that. So take something that had an impact on you that day, tell us why, and then pull it into a sort of a learning lesson for yourself and probably for others as well. So there are different spins and pivots that you can put on something that you might not think initially is such a big deal. But I've seen attorneys get on LinkedIn and talk about something their kids said at breakfast. It's one of the most amazing, heartfelt and yet very educational posts. Those personal stories that you can pivot into also a learning lesson in life or professionally is sometimes some of the biggest draws. And I see attorneys getting huge traction on that.
Well, and I think also, you know, being willing to, you know, put ourselves in a position where we're posting. But one of the things I know about being in social media, basically, I've run all the waves. You know, I started in marketing 2002, 2003. So I ran that wave, then into the social wave, and now we're into the AI wave. And I'm sure we could talk about other waves in between here and there. But my point is like, you don't know what's going to hit. Like, you know, you'll put together this like beautiful post and it's got the points it needs. And you're just like, I am about to bless the world with my knowledge. Watch out now. Right. And then you post it and it's like crickets, just, you know, one person. And that's like, you know, your best friend, you know, and you're like, thanks, Joe. You know, but it's just like, and then another day you're like, I got to put something, you kind of just tell a little story with your kid and you're just like, throw it up there. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I know. And then all of a sudden just all this engagement. And that should show us that authenticity is always going to beat, you know, polish. And I think if you can kind of use both of them together, you can have a great success. But I think attorneys, especially that I've worked with, they have that like desire of being like, producing a post to them is like preparing for a deposition or something, you know, preparing for trial. Yeah. And it's like, no, it's like 4 sentences and have a good day. Like, come on, don't take it so seriously. So I see, again, like the contrast of what you're saying is the genuineness, but just being willing to just do it and not second guess it. But as long as it's real and it's applicable in some way, don't be afraid to use it, even if it's your own life. And I can give we probably both know lots of attorneys that do a tremendous job with that.
No, I think you're spot on. We have to mix. We have to do a blend of the personal and the professional. I actually have a word for it. I call it professional. And so I mix personal, professional. It's not a typo. I usually say it's always a mix of the two. This myth of separating your personal life and your professional life, again, I think it's a myth. I do. If you're hit hard
think
somehow,
that myth went away about 2008.
Yeah. It goes over to professional and vice versa. I mean, you cannot put a Chinese wall between those two. So you might as well face it. We're going to have ups and downs with humans, and we support each other, you know, so share a little bit. Everybody has different parameters of what they're comfortable sharing, but I tend to push my attorneys a little bit beyond their comfort level. And once they see that it resonates, they're much more open to it, obviously.
See somebody whose content is all about how perfect they are, it tends to be a little off-putting. No matter what the context is,
Yes.
no matter what the platform is, we know you're not perfect. We know you don't experience heartache. So why are you pretending like you don't? So we're in the swamp. Now we're going to come across a monster. And often in these battles, hyperhero, we have to battle these monsters. And in the midst of the biohazard swamp, we've come across Toxitone, a venomous villain who releases a neuroreactive haze across online presence. Every swipe of their digital stylus doesn't just dull the message, it creates kind of an engagement repellent. Tone it down, it hisses. Neutralize your spark, corrupt the symbol, repel those who might come too close to you. But you amplify authenticity. You turn on the signal, you reclaim the feed. What are some of the biggest mistakes that professionals make when trying to drive engagement? And how do you help them create content that actually connects with the right people?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes I still see out there is the shout out, how great you are, making it all about myself. I am the superhero. I am the super lawyer. I am the, the Avo. So pleased, so honored to be.
So honored to have paid $2,000 to be on this list.
Yeah, exactly. and that still happens. And I think many other attorneys that I work with, and certainly most prospective clients or partners, referrals, just scroll right past that. So that's something that has to stop. You can tell that story. You can embed that as an aside, or you can talk about it indirectly and really talk about what was it about it? What was the honor that you felt about it? I mean, what was it based on? How did you help somebody, or how did you solve the issue, the problems, the settlement? What did you go through? When we were the dark sides, and how did you come through on the other end? And apropos, that all led to a recognition of the work that you put in, and that feels really great, and even greater for your client. So there are different ways of positioning that, but instead of just coming right out of the gate saying, "So honored to be given this award that I paid $2,000 for," or whatever, we still see some of that. So I think the content that really always is very mindful and intentional about who you're speaking to. And, my own content has a lot of sort of humor in it and snarkiness, all that stuff that I felt I couldn't do as an attorney is coming out now, later on in life. But I don't do it gratuitously. There's always, I can have a little bit of fun. I need to have fun, but it's all about me, right? No,
Right.
The fun is it's not gratuitous. Right. There has to be a lesson. There has to be something that I think is shared, sort of a commonality between the audience that I'm trying to speak to, and sort of the issue or the fun or the cynical aspect that I have on a certain topic. I did a whole series about my teenage daughter and our banter back and forth. I mean, you want to talk about posts that you thought would go nowhere? That weekend post, weekend to weekend. If I forgot one Sunday morning, people come at me and say, "Where is your post about your banter? What's the latest banter with your teenage girl and daughter?" And it was amazing. I mean, I put hardly any effort into it because that was life. There were some pretty fun spots, but that hit home. And the other posts where I spent a lot of time trying to teach something, kind of went okay. Sometimes better, but yeah. So it's the little things. It's the the life things that we all need to put a smile on our face, or teach us a lesson, or resonate and relate. Relatability is a big one.
And I think that obviously rings true, and it's always rung true. There's a portion in the Bible. I had a period in my life where I was very heavy there, but in like church and things like that. And I remember there's a phrase that was made by the Apostle Paul, and he said, "My strength is made perfect in weakness." And I think that people who have positions of authority, when they begin to understand how powerful it is to embrace their own humanity in front of other people, instead of creating a plastic persona that they think is impressing people. And we're just so far past cultivated impressing people. Social media ripped that Band-Aid away decades ago.
Yes.
And people that try to stand up and pretend that they're, like I said, plastic perfection, it does nothing but turn people off anymore. People don't go, "Oh, I want to be like them." They're just like, "Ew, they're fake. I don't want anything to do with them." And I'm not just talking about young people. This is just society as a whole, where we are. So we've defeated Toxitone. Now Brand Rod has slunk back into the shadows. And here you stand tall, hyperhero. A brand that's been built that's resonating, and it's not replicating. But when one voice speaks clearly, others start to rise too. What do you hope your clients and anyone caught in bland branding realize about the power of showing up as themselves?
I think what I really hope, and I don't only hope, I see this happen in real life and with working with attorneys, is that when they release, revive, resurface that person, that humanity, it's quite a relief and it's quite empowering too. Because imagine this, you're running on a track, you're running it at high speeds and you're meeting those deadlines and you're putting the billable hours and you're juggling family and everything else. It's a very stressful pace. Imagine not having to force then on top of all of that content that you think should be in a certain formality or in, expected, anticipated way. Imagine to be able to open those floodgates and say, I can be just me. I mean, how empowering and how freeing is that? And I see attorneys actually having fun with it. Can you imagine bringing fun back into your life and being able to be who you are? There's no effort there because it's a very natural, organic experience. So to see that and see the light up, and that usually happens after a few weeks when they realize they really don't have to force anything. They don't have to go study any books or the most recent case. They know enough. So to blend in your humanity, that comes completely naturally, as long as you can tap back into it. That's a very freeing experience, and I see it, and I can feel it when I'm speaking to attorneys, and that's amazing. Yeah,
absolutely, and that's a privilege that we get here as well, working with attorneys, getting them on camera, answering questions, talking about their practice, and yes, we're more FAQ to build authoritative positioning, but we build these shows around the attorneys so that they understand that. So whether it be content, video, whether it be whatever outlet that you're in, we want to encourage, any professional, but specifically because we work with attorneys, don't get caught up in that trap of being afraid what your friend from your class of, 82 might think if they see your marketing, and worry more about what the community thinks when they see your marketing. Now, The biohazard is quiet, but we know the monsters will come back. Toxitone is already brewing new edits, and brand rot's contamination will never stop. But as long as the hyperhero keeps rising, engagement, power is surging, sameness will never stand a chance. I'm Batman. And joining me today to defeat these monsters in the biohazard bog has been Hyperhero. And this is BAM! The show conquering sameness, one platform at a time.